don't arrive like one of my friends did on a Monday morning and expect much to happen, especially because the weather is terrible in Minsk a lot of the year, and it rained solid for 4 days. He was so frustrated. He had cabin fever. We're sitting in the same cafe.
SAR Experience.
Привет, welcome back to Odessa, and welcome back to James Tuss doing another vodka episode with James. We did one about a month ago in St. Petersburg. We actually recorded this one, but I had a little bit of a technical problem with the recording, so we're going to redo it. And today's video, we're going to be talking about where is the best country in this region to approach beautiful girls, especially during the day. I think we'll focus on that. So we're talking about Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. These are two countries that me and James have actually spent a good bit of time with either clients or just filming and hanging out in the last year or so. I would say we've been here we obviously met in Russia, and we've been a few times to Belarus, and obviously multiple times here to Ukraine. James has a channel where he specializes in day game. I'm going to link that below. If you don't know who he is, if you're interested, you probably already know if you've even searched that in the YouTube. On YouTube, you will have come across his videos. He's British, and he does it all over the world, not just in this region, but we've been hanging out recently here. So James, what do you think? Let's start maybe with your experience and your client's experience in Ukraine. Since we're in Ukraine, we're in Odessa Mama. It's summer. You were here with a client right now.
Yeah.
How do you find it this summer?
It's been cool. Actually, before we get started, we need to do the holy Bible.
I always forgot. Like, I ordered these vodkas.
Cheers.
And then we weren't going to. So Sloincha, cheers. Budma. So we have a local vodka. Yes, local vodka.
You can see why the price is slightly lower.
Yes, it's not quite the same quality as Absolut. But anyways.
This time around Odessa, it's been interesting. We've been having a joke about it, but we're both on our last legs. So I've been chilling out more, doing less of the club stuff, and really focusing on day game in Arcadia. And like I guess it should be common knowledge for guys, but if you're here and you don't speak Russian, and you're not here for any period of time, you should be targeting girls that are not locals to here. You should be targeting girls from Minsk, from Kiev, from Russia on holiday.
From provincial holidays. But there aren't going to be so many Russians, I think, at the moment. At least I haven't met so many.
Yeah,
but definitely from provincial cities.
My clients been mainly going on dates with girls from Kiev, which has been cool. And obviously the opportunity to take a girl home is high, because they're here on holiday, they want to have fun, they want to meet a foreigner, and if you do it in a way that you're stopping them in the daytime, you really differentiate yourself in terms of Tinder game or nightclub game, because you're doing that standout thing of approaching, showing your intent in the day, and women are very receptive to that. It's a very polarizing culture. Men want to be men, and women want men to be men as well. So if you are able to obviously do some day game, it's perfect.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I think one big mistake that a lot of guys make is that they come to Odessa and they come with false expectations that girls who are from here are very enthusiastic necessarily to meet a foreigner. I'm actually pulling with the shisha my mic out of place.
We've got wires all over the show.
Everywhere. So this is a huge touristic city, right? And one of the things that means is that local girls are very used to meeting foreigners. So you coming from where it happens to be the UK or US, or Germany, you're not going to be special. You're not a novelty. And this city is afflicted by a lot of sex tourism, unfortunately. So that means the default for a local girl here is basically to assume that you're a sex tourist.
Especially if you don't speak Russian.
Yes. If you speak Russian, like I do, then it's a bit different, because they obviously, the first question, you speak Russian. Well, that means you didn't just come here this week expecting to bang or pay to bang 10 prostitutes or something. So this is obviously a big help for me. I would say definitely what James pointed out, if you come for a short trip, which definitely less than a week, I think only focus on girls who are here on holidays. This weekend, it's coming up, it's the last weekend in July. There are a lot of girls here now from Kiev on a weekend trip. We can see it. Actually, my client who's with me, he looked on Tinder and he said the difference from the beginning of the week to the end of the week is massive. There are just a lot of girls who come from Kiev for the weekend. You can see in the beach clubs that they're really full as opposed to early in the week. So that's going to be your target demographic for sure, is girls who come here for a holiday, want an experience. It's a holiday, it's summertime.
I'd say that, don't be scared about screening them out. I was specifically telling my client, he's a French guy, very cool guy. And I was specifically saying to him, look, if you do day game local girls, you happen to come across them in Arcadia, then actually screen them out, because you're going for that fast lay.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something James pointed out in another video on his own channel that I saw that I really thought was very, very sharp. It's just like, basically, don't talk to them. Just that's what he means with screen.
Just say nice to meet you,
Yeah.
let them enjoy the compliment, and then just send them on their way feeling good, but say, look, okay, I'm not really looking. You can even joke to them, if they understand English, say, I'm not actually looking to meet a local girl.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, are you? And you'll be like,
This will make you more of a challenge, maybe.
Yeah, maybe they'll.
Oh, you're from Odessa. You could say something like, "Hey, you're from Odessa. I've been warned about girls like you. I think I'm going to stay well clear. This will probably work better than trying to hit on them." So overall, because we're obviously going to do a comparison in this video between Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. How did you find it overall in Ukraine, being a foreign guy coming here? Obviously, James relies on English because he doesn't speak Russian. My situation is a bit different, but I can give you the insights of my clients and my friends who don't speak Russian.
Would you say the majority of your clients that come to the former Soviet Union don't speak Russian?
Yes, this is one of the big things I help them with. Because if you've gone to learn Russian, you've probably spent a good bit of time in this region. Also, you'll have gone through the process of learning the language. It actually means you also have to learn a lot about the culture, and then you're going to be able to relate to the people a lot more. So definitely that's one of the big things I help clients with, because if they're out in a club with me and the girl doesn't speak particularly good English, then obviously I can interject and really raise the energy levels and facilitate that communication. I do have a rule with them though, that if they meet a girl who doesn't speak really enough English to have a basic conversation, like you said with screening, just like because there's so many beautiful girls in this region, why invest a huge amount of time trying to hook up with someone who's basically you're not going to be able to have a conversation with? I don't find it very realistic when you have, because there's an opportunity cost. You're going to invest time in someone where I think the probability is very low, and you have a lot of other options. So my advice is always just to move on if they can't even maintain a basic
agree with that. I think it's sensible. Again, looking at kind of time limits on places, most guys go on a kind of lad's holiday for maximum 5 to 7 days. If you have longer than a place, you can always get away with stopping and doing what my friend does, which is get out the Google Translate, the voice thing, and actually have the conversation in the street. But if you're here, as you said, if you're here for a limited period of time, just move on.
Exactly.
Your time is your most valuable commodity when you have a short trip. You need to protect it.
100%. In life in general, don't invest time in something that's not likely to give you a reward commensurate. So how do you find Ukraine overall versus, say, I know we're going to go into the other countries. How would you say, we'll give it 3 levels, easy to approach during the day, medium, or hard?
Odessa,
maybe on a world scale first. Would you compare to where you've traveled elsewhere?
Ukraine in general, they are receptive to cold approach if you know what you're doing, because there's a kind of almost a post-feminist society. They really like men to be men, and I think you get a lot of this kind of blustering around with guys where they're just the stereotypical meathead guys, but they're scared to talk to girls, right? They've got their little man bag on, they've got their bottle of vodka, but they're all macho, pretending to fight other guys, but they cannot say hello to a woman. So if you cold approach in a cool way, especially as an American or an English guy, kind of almost that James Bond-esque, quite smooth, just chilled, they do like it, absolutely. So they are receptive to cold approach. In Ukraine, compared to Odessa and Russia, I'd say St. Petersburg, in my experience, is the most receptive of the recent cities we've gone to. Minsk as well, very receptive to cold approach. I'd say Odessa and Kiev are a step down from that, but still, on the world scale, fairly receptive to cold approach.
Okay, cool. I'll just go. So actually recently, and this is something that's important, you should go and check out on James' channel, we did a video where he challenged me to go and cold approach, because I've never done this before. Of course, I meet a lot of women during the day when I'm hanging out in cafes or bars or restaurants, but never actually gone and specifically just cold approach. So James coached me through it, and we made this video. It's an hour long. You can go and watch. I actually have to watch the whole thing yet, because I didn't realize I haven't watched it all. I'll be honest.
It's all about watching yourself on camera.
But I got a lot of comments. People actually knew me from before as a lawyer, wrote to me and said, "Oh my God, you made this video with James Tusk." Yeah,
really?
My former intern.
That's amazing.
So that was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's a worldwide version. I'm going to put out a video also, a shorter one on my channel, probably next week. But go in the meantime and watch the one on James's, and you get an idea what it's like to actually cold approach. And I did half of them in English and half of them in Russian to give you this comparison. Okay, it was a small data sample. We'd have to spend a week really trying out to see which works better. But I actually got one very good reaction using English as well. So you don't necessarily have to rely on Russian to do that. So that's great. So you would say that Ukraine, or just the region overall, is pretty positive to cold approach, despite maybe the stereotype of Russians or Russian speakers or people from the former Soviet Union being cold and hard to approach.
I think Moscow, they are slightly colder, but again, it's more polarizing. Yeah. So if you can approach in a good way, they're going to be very receptive to it. But I'd say St. Petersburg, definitely. I think you made a very valid point, which is the quality is lower, yet the receptibility is far higher, and they almost play on the fact that you say you've been in Moscow, it's a cold city, And in order to almost solidify that stereotype of St. Petersburg being the more friendly second city, they become even more friendly. Yeah. But as you said, the quality isn't there. You're going to be struggling for the very top echelon. It's a city of sevens. It's similar to London. City of sevens, maybe you're 8. Yeah. If you want the real quality, go to Moscow, but expect a far higher blowout rate in terms of cold approach.
Yeah, that seems a pretty good synopsis. So Ukraine overall, I would say my client's experience is definitely a bit harder because of this prejudice, or I would say bias that a lot of tourists here are sex tourists, which unfortunately is true to a certain extent. So you're going to have to overcome that, and that's why his tip about focusing girls who are on holidays is very, very pertinent, because they're here to have fun. They don't live here. They don't have they don't have social status in this city in particular that they're worried about. For women, it's obviously very important to protect their own status within their social circle. So if they suddenly are seen with 5 foreign guys on holidays, they will get a bad reputation as being an easy girl or maybe even a prostitute. And I think that's something that you have to be cognizant about. I find that because I'm here a lot and I speak Russian, that even for me it takes a little bit of time. That normally I meet a lot of girls' friends before anything really serious happens between us with girls who are local. So I would say overall in Ukraine, it's a mixed bag. I think if you can overcome that hurdle or figure out a way around being labeled as sex tourist, you're going to have a lot of fun here if you cold approach, like James said. But let's move on to the other countries, because I think they were a lot more interesting for what you specialize in. So let's go to St. Petersburg, since we already mentioned it. So we were in St. Petersburg for the White Nights. Absolutely phenomenal experience to go for, just in general, even if you're not interested in meeting women. Just it's a beautiful city, and that time of year the sun hardly sets. A lot of parties. The weather is good, which is unusual in St. Petersburg.
Would you say, because we actually experienced the kind of big Scarlet Sails thing slightly differently. You went on a boat, didn't you?
Yep.
And I kind of did it from the land. So would you say if guys were coming next year and they weren't happen to be with us, but just for general advice, that it was worth doing the boat or not?
That's a tricky question for me to answer, because my client who was with me, you had 2? Yeah, so I was with some friends and I had a client with me. So I actually had 2 clients with me. Yeah, so one of them was on the boat with me. The other one, we actually didn't buy tickets for the boat. We had a whole mess getting the tickets. So when we arrived, and they gave us the wrong address. So he was in another part of the city, and he had to rush to meet us, our second client. And so basically we basically ended up in the boat and he ended up on land. He was pretty pissed at me because he saw me pull up. But the phone wouldn't work. The data went down.
Was that the American dude?
Yeah. So unfortunately,
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
but actually he was happy he wasn't on the boat, because the boat was cold. We didn't have champagne.
He got a nice day game session with us as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He got a free day game, right?
Exactly, afterwards. So no, I was happy with what happened, but just that evening, just because we were talking about the Scarlet Sails on this boat, I was a bit cold on the boat. It's obviously a different experience. You actually go out a little bit and you see everything, but I think you see almost as much from the land. And he had champagne and I think some food included on his ticket. So basically,
and then the potential for good logistics as well.
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
Play it smart.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm pretty 50-50 on whether you should pay for the boat. Actually, just being on this elevated pier, because that's actually where we had tickets for, but we argued so much because we thought we had a boat, and I was trying to call him, but the phone wouldn't work because there's so many people in that part of the city at that time.
Well, it's the biggest,
so basically he saw us all pull off the last second we were allowed on the boat because there were spaces, but actually he was pretty happy he didn't get on the boat at the end. So that's what I would say about that if you're thinking of going. So back onto cold approach. Obviously we did an experiment. You can check out the video. My impression in St. Petersburg was it was extremely open, even if you're a tourist.
It's comparable to some actually quite friendly European cities almost. It really surprised me. I think actually the lack of quality did as well. I mean, the Royal Hot Girls, I think it was increased because of the fact there was the obviously Scarlet Sails and White Nights going on. Yeah. But I think if you went there September time, when term time, actually maybe when the university had restarted, it might be a different scenario because the students have come back. But you'd assume most of them would have been there for Scarlet Sails. So to sum up, I guess the quality wasn't high, but in terms of receptibility, cold approach, extremely high, because they really want to be kind of seen as the friendly, kind of accepting second city.
Yeah, and St. Petersburg has a reputation for being more intellectual than, say, Moscow. Moscow is where all the money is. Mm-hmm. Like if you're looking for ambitious to make it, you go to the capital, and there's just a huge amount of wealth there. So it's a very different vibe.
More extremes, aren't there? There's the Babushka dying on the street corner, and then there's the oligarch walking past her.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
it's huge. But it's post-Soviet Union, so you do see those extremes in terms of rich and poor. Overall, there's a lot of hipsters. Especially in the cafes, a lot of cool cafes in the center, a very trendy city. So it depends if you're into that vibe, being a hipster. I'm not sure if you fall into that, James, or not.
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of an oxymoron. I look like a nutcase, but I'm actually, soft private school educated guy. So, bit of an oxymoron, walking oxymoron going on.
So that's probably why the talent was not as hot, basically, as what you would expect in like a big Russian city.
Yeah, I'd agree. And then moving on to my experience of Minsk, well, obviously Minsk is going to be the place to go. It's going to turn into, I imagine, what Croatia was 10 years ago, which is no British people at the beginning, no American people, and then completely overrun. So if you do want to experience, almost old school Soviet Union with quality women and receptacle to cold approach and not many guys doing it, not much competition, get over to Minsk. It's a very cool place. There's a stigma with the former Soviet Union about girls not going home on the first night. In my experience, that wasn't the case in Minsk. They're very happy to go home with you if you've got your game in play, which surprised me a bit. And also, it's a cool city. It's not the best looking city, but it's very pedestrianised. Bar areas all in kind of the main square. So, in terms of walking around, you see a lot of quality in one place. It's not having to necessarily jump around too much.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think so. Minsk, yeah. I mean, I think unfortunately will become like a sex tourist mecca in the future because basically at the moment there are very few tourists, Western tourists who go there, almost none. And girls also because they need normally a visa to travel. It has become easier for Belarusians to get a Schengen visa, but it's not like Ukraine where they have 6 months per year visa free to Schengen. So for them, it's like a cool thing to meet someone who's from Western Europe, North America, or just anyone who's a foreigner in general. So they're super open, super enthusiastic. Also, Belarus is quite boring. As a country outside of the weekend where everyone gets smashed drunk and actually parties a lot, there's not a whole lot going on. So I think that was the country where I found just meeting women in general was very easy. James brought up also a very good point about going home on the first night. I guess you call that same day lay in his jargon, his parlance. Basically, one thing I noticed that was quite interesting, very different to Ukraine, was the fact that girls were very comfortable letting me or my friends or my clients go home with their friends, having met them in a bar or a club. That's very different to Ukraine. That doesn't happen here. That's partly because of the political system. Basically, Belarus is very strong in rule of law. That means that if there's a crime, the police and the government are very, very strict at trying to find someone culpable and, sanctioning them for it. As a result, there's a very high level of trust because it's very hard to commit a crime in Belarus and actually get away with it. And as a result, they tend to trust strangers a lot more than in Ukraine, where rule of law is extremely low. And as a result of that, obviously, something happens to you, then you're probably not going to be able to go to the police and get it solved. And
how did the dynamic of the European Games change things? Were a lot more tourists there, or not so much?
I made a video about that, about how we hacked the Russian visa system, because both me and James actually went to Russia without a visa because we had tickets to European Games. I left the day they started, and I came back just after they finished. Apparently there were some tourists there. I don't think the European Games were a very, very big event in reality, so I have no idea. But Belarusians were very excited that the European Games were going on.
On the world stage a bit.
Yes,
to a degree.
And I was very happy because I didn't need a visa for Russia. So I don't think that really actually, at the end of the day, made a big difference in terms of the number of visitors. Maybe you can look up some government stats. The other thing was that they actually gave them permission to have terraces a lot more and to spruce up the city a lot.
Really?
So the city was really, really nice during the period. Yeah, it looked excellent, a lot better than before. Although it's a very clean and very safe city and very pleasant in the city center in those areas like Namiga anyways, but they made it extra special for the events. That was the good thing about that.
And then in terms of your overall, if you had to, you're put on the spot and you had to say the most quality, the hottest girls from either Russia, I know it's a very generalized question, but if you had to say,
Just massive.
yeah, let's smaller it down. Moscow, Minsk, or Odessa?
Moscow, Minsk, or Odessa.
Quality of women, purely on the looks.
Moscow, because it just attracts hot women because there's a lot of money there.
Sure.
And then Minsk. I think Minsk, they're concentrated into a very small part of the city. So especially if you're just going around, hanging around, or doing the game, or bar game, any sort of like social situation at all, Minsk is probably better. Mm-hmm. Simply because they're in a very small part of the city. So they're just a huge amount of traffic in that sense, especially at the weekend. During the week, it is quite quiet. Summer is better because people are out. Students are not in university, so that helps. But don't arrive like one of my friends did on a Monday morning and expect much to happen, especially because the weather is terrible in Minsk a lot of the year, and it rained solid for 4 days. He was so frustrated. He had cabin fever. We're sitting in the same cafe.
Which one was it?
We went to Sobota 4. Yeah, so definitely don't do that. Come like a Thursday and leave on a Monday at the latest, maybe even Sunday. No, Sunday's good to stay because you can smoke some shisha.
And also clear up any leads you have that haven't converted. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
like
before-
Friday, Saturday, they might be out with their friends, but Sunday, it's great for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've given you a pretty good overview of our experience mainly in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Odessa, Kiev, Minsk. That's how we found it. So I think overall, to summarize in this video, where would you say? You'd say Ukraine is probably the number 3 out of the 3, and then where would you put number 1? Russia or Belarus?
It really depends what you're looking for. I mean, everyone's there for a different time. If you're just going for kind of a holiday, probably Odessa, just because it's got a chilled beach vibe, and if you're with mates or you've got a girlfriend, it's definitely one of the prettier places to come. If you're looking for raw beauty, Moscow. If you're looking for kind of a cool, quirky place, then Kiev. And if you're looking to meet an untouched bunch of women that are very receptive to cold approach, Minsk. So it really depends. You've got to figure out what makes your ideal holiday, and then you can ask Connor, obviously, and he'll be like, okay, you like that, and that factor. I will take you to this place. So it's about kind of figuring out what you want, as opposed to a cookie cutter approach, I think.
Yeah, I always talk to my clients when I get them on the phone, and I try to figure out which is going to be the best place. In general, I take them actually to Minsk first. I don't take them to Russia because most of them need a visa. I do have some Latin American clients, and a lot of them actually can go visa-free already to Russia, which is good.
That's
they want
insane. South Africa. I've got a few South African mates. They don't require
South
it.
America.
No, but also South Africa.
South Africa.
My South African friend doesn't need a visa to get into Russia.
There you go.
Absolutely bizarre.
Or Israel. Israelis don't need that. So that's actually a little bit complicated for me because I need to go get a visa if I'm going to bring them there.
Yeah.
But things got a little bit better. Now we have visa-free to Kaliningrad. Going to be doing a vlog from Kaliningrad probably in September. We actually, James can't because you've only got a British passport, right?
Correct.
So it's all European Union citizens except the United Kingdom. That's because of the bad diplomatic relations between the UK and Russia at the moment. But fortunately, I have an Irish passport, so we're not going to do Brexit. Hopefully,
the old Irish entry.
Exactly.
The Irish exit, the old Irish entry.
So I'm going to pull that one out and go to Kaliningrad. It's visa free. It's a bit complicated. I'll make another video about it. But basically, you can go for like a week every month, but you have to apply in advance, and you can't fly from Minsk. And I'll make a complete video about that because it's a little bit complicated to just discuss in this video, a bit off point. So. Basically, I figure out where I think is going to be the best fit. In general, that's actually Minsk because of the visa and just the openness. I wouldn't bring them to Ukraine normally on the first trip if I had the choice. But if I had some clients last weekend and they just wanted a party, it's summer. Like here it's a lot cooler, right? So if you want that,
it's just a nice place to be. Like where we're sitting, it's a shame we can't pan around, but it's like leafy green. There's hot girls, there's shisha, there's like water sprays, cooling the place down. It's just a very relaxed kind of vibe,
And you have the whole beach scene if you want to do that. You're not going to have that in Minsk.
Maybe even combine, as you said, what's cool is when you can, because these places are pretty cheap, flights between the two. You come to somewhere like Minsk, or you go to somewhere like Moscow or Kiev, and then you finish it with someone like Odessa,
Okay. So if you want to do a tour, I have one new client, and he wants to go to at least 2 cities. I said Minsk first, and then come to Odessa if it's depending on the timing, because summer season will end. So I think if you want that complete experience, then definitely do a Ukrainian city and Minsk. And then if you don't have problems with visa or you want to get a visa, then I would say St. Petersburg, if it's the White Knights, definitely very, very good. And then mix that in with Minsk, and you've got like the high quality, and that you have a little bit of a contrast as well. I think it makes it really interesting.
And also massively overrated in terms of TV, in my opinion. I never really got it, but Friends, everyone has heard of Minsk, right? From Phoebe's boyfriend moving off to Belarus. So you have to do it just for that sake. That's where it would have triggered your brain from in terms of deep embedded memory. So do it.
And don't be scared to go there. It's completely safe.
It's made out in Friends to be like this awful Soviet, blah blah blah. But it's a very friendly place. Surprisingly friendly people. Very fucking cheap cost of living. Cheap food. It's just a good place to go.
Yeah.
There's no downsides really.
Yeah, St. Petersburg and Moscow are definitely more expensive than both Ukraine and Belarus, if that's a factor. But I think for most of you, it's kind of if you're coming from London, New York, or a big city like that,
by the by, yeah.
It doesn't really matter. Cool. If you want to check out James's channel, of course, I've already linked it below. Check out that video where we do day game together in St. Petersburg. And write me a comment below, of course, about how you found approaching girls, just girls in general, between Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, if you have that experience. And if you're interested in the Zara experience, which is probable because you got to the end of this podcast, then what you should do is write me a DM, slide into my DMs. My handle is Zara Experience, or write me an email at connorklein@zaraexperience.com. What's going to happen is I'm going to send you a little questionnaire. If I think it's a good fit, we're going to have a strategy call together. We're going to see, what kind of itinerary is going to suit you, and if we come to an agreement, then you will get the opportunity to live the Zara experience here with me. But even better, James and I have been discussing, mentioned this in the last podcast, we're going to do some joint programs together. We're going to do them in Brazil, and we're going to do them here in the former Soviet Union. So the reason for Brazil, I know you haven't seen me very often. Brazil is actually my favorite country in the world, and probably I'm going to launch a second channel because I think it's different to the content here. Next time we go to Brazil, and I'm going to vlog it and show you why Brazil is my favorite country in the world. So if you're interested in learning boat day game and then having the Czar experience on top of that, then
It's
this
a
is
perfect way to see a place, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because it's almost like you get the obviously you speak the language, you speak Russian and Portuguese fluent, you understand the culture a lot, having travelled there for a decade or longer, and you're very good at the bar game and the night game.
So-
and then combine that with kind of the day game, and also be able to have a shot of vodka with us if you want, and talk our ears off, a bit of shisha. It's a general all-round package. It's the way to go, I think.
Okay. So write either James or me a message, and then we can discuss it. We're going to set up a little bit more formally as we go forward in the next month or two. But if you're interested and you want to get ahead of the pack and actually, have the opportunity, because we're obviously going to limit places.
Very
and
limited.
Yeah.
Very
So
limited.
definitely write me a message now. Show your interest, and that'll get you to the top of the queue when we launch it in the future. So. Until the next episode, which is coming up, you'll see it the week after this one, but we're going to record it right now. Do svidania, do pobачення. See you soon. Ciao.
Czar Experience.